Please help me to reach 7,000 subscribers. Lily Thompson never imagined her life would shrink down to a cramped two-bedroom apartment on the south side of Seattle, surrounded by overdue bills, half-repaired appliances, and the constant hum of exhaustion. But after their mother passed away and their father disappeared from their lives, Lily was the only one left to hold the pieces together. She worked any job she could find, but the one that paid just enough to keep the lights on was cleaning luxury homes for people who never had to worry about whether rent was due or whether their little brother had enough medication to get through the month. Every morning, before the sun touched the glossy skyline, Lily stood in front of the small bathroom mirror, trying not to cry. She braided her hair, put on her worn cleaning shirt, and whispered the same sentence to her reflection. "You can break down later. Right now, you have work to do." She wasn't the kind of person anyone would notice in a crowd. Her shoes were cheap, her bag was patched, and beneath her eyes sat the tired shadows of responsibility much larger than 25 years should carry. But her strength was quiet, steady, and unshakable, built from the kind of pain that never left but kept teaching. Meanwhile, in a glass tower overlooking the city, Alexander Reed was taking a very different breath. His morning began with silence, espresso, and a calendar packed with meetings that decided the fate of billion-dollar deals. He wasn't known for kindness, nor humor, nor anything remotely human, only precision, intensity, and a standard of performance no one had ever truly met. His employees didn't speak around him unless necessary, and even then only with carefully chosen words. People described him as brilliant, ruthless, and impossible. And maybe they were right. Alex had built Reed Technologies from the ground up, sacrificing friendships, sleep, and emotion to be the youngest Fortune 500 CEO in the West Coast. He was respected, feared, envied, but rarely understood. People assumed his stone-cold demeanor came from ego. In truth, it was armor. The world had taught him long ago that softness could be used against you, and Alex Reed refused to be weak in a world that expected him to fall. Their lives should never have crossed. Lily cleaned homes where people left behind untouched wine bottles, marble kitchens used only to pour black coffee, and closets larger than her entire apartment. She had seen excess before, but nothing prepared her for the email she received that Thursday morning. New client, priority level, downtown penthouse, Reed Tower. Her supervisor underlined the last two words with 3 exclamation points. Even the cleaning company spoke his name like a warning. Reed Tower was the crown jewel of the Seattle skyline, and its top floor belonged exclusively to Alexander Reed. Employees whispered that nobody lasted more than a month working directly with him. One of the cleaners once returned with tears streaming down her face, not because he yelled, but because his silence could carve through confidence like steel. Lily didn't have the luxury of fear. She packed her supplies, caught the morning bus, and spent the ride praying her brother would stay safe at school and that today's shift wouldn't end with her being unemployed. When she stepped into the tower lobby, she felt painfully small amid marble floors, chrome elevators, and security desks that looked more expensive than her yearly rent. The penthouse greeted her with a stillness that didn't feel lived in. The windows stretched floor to ceiling, framing the city like a private kingdom. The furniture was modern, elegant, and cold. Everything was spotless. So spotless, she wondered why they needed her at all. She slipped on her gloves, tied her apron, and got to work. She didn't hear the elevator doors open. She didn't hear the footsteps approaching behind her. She only realized she wasn't alone when a deep voice cut through the silence like a blade. "You're using the wrong cleaning agent on that surface." She spun around so fast she nearly dropped the spray bottle. And there he stood, Alexander Reed himself. Hands in his pockets, jaw tense, eyes sharp enough to slice glass. He wasn't handsome in a warm way, he was handsome in a dangerous, intimidating way. The kind of man whose posture told the world that he never lost. I'm sorry, Lily stammered. I was told this was standard for granite countertops. He stepped closer, eyes locked on hers, expression unreadable. Standard isn't acceptable here. This is honed Italian stone. That bile will strip the finish. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. This job was her lifeline, and she had already messed up within seconds of meeting him. I'll fix it. Alex exhaled sharply, as if her presence itself was an inconvenience. You're new. Yes, first day. That explains the mistakes. No softness, not even basic courtesy. She swallowed her frustration. I'm doing my best. Your best, he replied, adjusting a cufflink without looking at her, is measured by results, not effort. I don't tolerate errors in this penthouse. She bit her lip, holding back the words she wanted to say. He walked past her to set down his briefcase. She turned back to cleaning, but her hands trembled so slightly she hoped he wouldn't notice. This penthouse, this city, this world, none of it cared about girls who had to be strong because life didn't give them another choice. Alex watched her from the corner of his eye. Something in the way she concentrated, jaw set, refusing to crumble, caught him off guard. Most people either feared him openly or groveled before him. She did neither. He dismissed the thought as quickly as it came. Feelings had no place here. For Lily, the day had already begun as a test, and she had no idea this was only the beginning of a story that would shatter every rule both of them lived by. The following morning began the way most of Lily's days did, with too little sleep, a silent kitchen, and the dull ache of responsibility pressing into her bones. She stood next to the stove, flipping pancakes while her younger brother Noah sat at the small dining table going over homework. His brown hair stuck up in every direction, and his eyes were groggy from a late night of coughing. His asthma had been getting worse, but the generic inhalers from the clinic barely helped. "You should stay home today," Lily said, setting a plate in front of him. Noah shook his head, stubborn like always. "If I miss again, they'll call the school counselor. I'm fine, really." He wasn't, but there was no time to argue. Her bus left in 10 minutes, and she couldn't afford to be late to Reed Tower again, not after yesterday's tense encounter. She hugged him, tucked his lunch into his backpack, and ran out the door, hoping today wouldn't turn into another avalanche of stress. But the moment she stepped off the elevator onto the executive floor of Reed Technologies, she sensed something was different. Employees whispered in small clusters. Phone screens flashed breaking news banners. The air carried urgency, panic even. Lily tried to ignore it and headed to the penthouse level where the cleaning crew usually entered unnoticed. She wasn't expecting anyone to be waiting for her. But the moment the elevator doors slid open, she came face to face with a sharply dressed man in a tailored navy suit. His expression was stiff, his gaze calculating. "You," he said, checking his tablet. "Lily Thompson?" Her stomach dropped. "Yes? You're to report to the CEO's office immediately." Fear hit fast and cold. She followed him through glass halls lined with framed innovation awards and digital displays of stock tickers. Every step sounded too loud on the polished floor, as if she was being marched toward a courtroom where the verdict was already decided. Finally, the assistant stopped outside double doors of dark-stained wood. "He's waiting." She took a breath and stepped inside. The office was larger than her apartment, sleek concrete walls, statement art, a floor-to-ceiling view of the Seattle waterfront. Alexander Reed stood at the window, hands clasped behind his back, jaw clenched with a tension that radiated through the room. He didn't turn when she entered. "Close the door." She obeyed. A long moment passed before he finally faced her. His suit jacket was discarded on the desk, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, a rare crack in his perfectly controlled exterior, but his eyes were sharper than yesterday, colder. "Did you tell anyone about what you heard last night?" Lily blinked. "What I heard?" He stepped closer. "The conference call, the leaked prototype files, the press inquiries?" She shook her head quickly. "No, I barely understood what was happening. I just finished wiping down the desk and left." Alex studied her as if dissecting every micro-expression, searching for a lie. She felt her throat tighten under the weight of his scrutiny. Finally, he spoke again. "Reed Technologies is under investigation. Someone is leaking confidential data to competitors and financial press. If the board believes the leaks came from inside the penthouse, the consequences could be significant." Lily swallowed hard. "I would never—" He cut her off with a raised hand. "Intent is irrelevant. Perception is what destroys careers. I cannot risk any possibility of your involvement." My pulse raced. "Then am I being fired?" For the first time, something flickered in his eyes, something she couldn't interpret. He walked behind his desk, opened a file, and slid a printed document in front of her. "You're being reassigned." She stared down at the contract. Title: Temporary Personal Executive Assistant. Her heart sank. I don't understand. You were in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now you're aware of things that should never leave this building." "Then I'll sign a confidentiality agreement. I'll forget everything I heard." "Not enough." His tone sharpened. "I need you where I can see you. Report to me directly, beginning immediately." Her breath caught. This wasn't a promotion, it was containment, control. "I can't be a personal assistant. I don't have office experience. I clean homes. I'm not—" He interrupted. "You will learn. If you accept this position, your salary increases to $70,000 annually." Her world froze. 70,000? That number rattled through her mind like a lifeline snapping taut. With that kind of money, she could pay off debt, move Noah into a better neighborhood, afford real medical treatment. But then, a second thought hit. Why would a man like Alexander Reed offer that to someone like her? Before she could speak, he continued. "And that includes medical coverage, full benefits, no deductible." Her chest tightened. Noah, his hospital bills, his inhalers, the school reports, everything she had been barely holding together suddenly shifted. "And if I refuse?" she asked quietly. Alex met her eyes with a calmness that felt more threatening than anger. "Then I escort you out of the building, void your employment file, and, if asked, I can't guarantee the narrative won't shift in a direction unfavorable to you." Her knees wobbled. You're blackmailing me." He didn't blink. "I'm protecting my company." Silence stretched between them. She looked down at the contract again. Her hand trembled as she brushed her thumb over the signature line. She felt trapped, manipulated, cornered, but the truth was unforgiving. She didn't have the luxury to walk away. No one needed her. Bills needed her. Survival didn't give her choices. She picked up the pen, signing her name with shaky handwriting. Alex nodded once, collected the document, and closed the folder as if locking away a piece of her freedom. "Your new hours begin now," he said, adjusting his sleeves. "You'll be stationed outside this office, managing my schedule, communication, and task flow. Coffee break at 11. Lunch is optional." She stared. "Optional?" "I rarely take one." A faint hint of something, burnout, hollowness, passed through his expression but vanished just as quickly. "You'll receive your access badge on the way out." Lily stood, numb. She walked to the door, hand on the handle, when his voice stopped her. "One more thing." She turned. "In this role, mistakes have consequences. Don't make any."
She left the office with her world completely rearranged, not by choice, but by the demands of a man who wielded power like a weapon and believed she was now part of the battlefield. She had no idea this decision would entangle their lives in ways neither of them could ever undo.
Lily's first day as Alexander Reed's personal assistant began long before the sun rose. She arrived at Reed Tower with a borrowed blazer and thrift store heels that already pinched her toes. The executive floor was silent, sterile, polished, yet she felt every gaze that followed her from behind translucent office glass. People weren't unkind, but they were guarded, reading her the same way they read stock reports and quarterly projections. In this tower, everything had value: profit, performance, reputation. She wasn't sure what her value was yet. She powered on her new work computer, fingers stiff with nerves. Within minutes, a notification chimed. Alex's shared digital schedule, color-coded and packed to the minute. Meetings, presentations, investor calls, crisis briefings. Just looking at it made her shoulders tense. How did anyone live like this? Before she could take a breath, the office door behind her opened. She turned to see Alex walking in, earphone in one ear, tablet in hand, already speaking in a clipped tone. "No, I don't care if the board is nervous. What they want is results, not fear. Figure it out." He ended the call without saying goodbye. Cold, decisive, efficiency over humanity. His eyes flicked to Lily. "Coffee, black, no sugar." Her heart jumped. "Yes, of course." "The machine is in the executive kitchen," he added, already moving to his desk. 2 minutes." 2 minutes? That wasn't a request. That was a deadline. She rushed down the hallway, heels clicking, murmurs following her. The kitchen looked like a cooking show set. Granite counters, industrial espresso machines, touchscreen appliances bigger than her stove at home. It took her a moment to even figure out where the coffee beans were stored. She returned exactly on time, coffee in hand, trying not to look rushed. Alex didn't thank her. He didn't look up. He just picked up the cup with the same impersonal precision he gave everything else and began reviewing documents. To him, this was just one more expected transaction in a day full of them. Lily forced a breath, sat at her small desk outside his office, and opened her inbox. 50 emails waiting, most urgent. She hadn't realized this job meant not just scheduling, but gatekeeping communications, editing presentations, relaying instructions to department heads, and screening media inquiries. Everything flowed through her. And everything had consequences. By noon, her shoulders burned from typing, and her heart raced under the pressure. Noah texted that he was having trouble breathing during gym class. She texted back that she would call the clinic on lunch break, if she even got one. At 12:13 p.m., Alex finally stepped out. He studied her for a split second. "You haven't eaten?" She blinked. "I didn't know if I should." He checked his watch. "There's a 15-minute window before my call with legal. Take it." 15 minutes. Not a kindness, but a scheduled allowance. Still, she whispered, "Thank you," gathered her things and slipped outside for fresh air. The wind was cool, Seattle gray skies pressing low. She sat on a bench across the street, unwrapping the sandwich she'd packed at dawn. Halfway through her first bite, her phone vibrated. "Alex." "Where are you?" Her stomach nodded. "Outside. You said I had 15 minutes. You have 12 now. Return with the updated investor packet." No softness, no pause. She rushed back, breath forced out in sharp exhale. She had barely sat down when he gestured her inside. He paced as he spoke. "Investors want reassurance. The data breach is escalating. Competitors already have projections we haven't released." Lily listened, typing as fast as she could while he rattled off numbers, legal statements, and projected damage control strategy. He dictated like a general preparing for war: precision, command, certainty. But the longer she watched him move, the more she noticed small cracks in that armor. The sleepless redness in his eyes, the tension in his shoulders that never relaxed.
the wear in his voice when he thought no one was listening. He wasn't a machine. He was a man holding up a collapsing universe and pretending he couldn't feel the weight. A slip of her typing caught the corner his attention. "You misspelled asset." He didn't sound angry, just clinical. She corrected it. Then, without thinking, she spoke. "Do you ever rest?" He froze. For a moment, he didn't answer. When he did, his tone was flat. Rest is a luxury reserved for people who can afford to fail. Their eyes met. Something unspoken lingered there, heavy, complicated. Then he looked away, and the conversation ended. The rest of the day became a blur of corporate firestorms, a surprise board meeting, a journalist demanding comment, and an internal investigation meeting that stretched late into the evening. Employees filed in and out, leaving with pale faces and tight mouths. Everyone was afraid of disappointing the man who ran this empire. Lily typed through it all, taking notes, coordinating follow-up, sending directives to departments she'd never even known existed. Her hands started to tremble from strain, but she pushed through. Failure couldn't be an option, not with Noah depending on her. When the final meeting ended, the office emptied quickly, like a building that needed to breathe out tension. Lily gathered her things, ready to leave, when she noticed Alex still at his desk, staring at the city through darkened glass. She hesitated. Something about the angle of his shoulders, drawn tight, fatigued, made him look less untouchable, more human. She turned to leave, but he spoke quietly. "You did better than expected today." She froze. It was the closest thing to praise she'd heard from him. "Thank you," she whispered. "It won't get easier." That was not a warning. It was a truth. "I can handle it." He studied her again, the way she stood tall, even when tired, the strength in her voice, the resilience she didn't brag about. Most people bent around him. She didn't. "You're different." She didn't know what to say. Compliment or observation? She wasn't sure. He cut the moment short, straightening. "Be here at 7 tomorrow. I need you for a meeting before the board arrives." 7. She would barely get 5 hours of sleep, but she nodded anyway. As she headed toward the elevator, she heard him speak again, so quietly she wasn't sure she was meant to hear it. "I don't know how you're still standing." She didn't answer. If she did, she might have told him the truth. People like her don't get the privilege of falling apart. She stepped into the elevator and watched the doors slide shut, unaware that the walls between them, walls built from pressure, pride, and loneliness, had just begun to crack.
The late hours of the evening settled over Daniel's penthouse like a velvet curtain, the city lights outside glowing against the glass walls. Emily had just finished putting away the last items in the kitchen, exhausted from a day that felt longer than usual. She stretched her fingers, fighting a quiet ache in her back. She told herself she could make it another few weeks, just a few more pay cycles, before her mother's medical bills were cleared. She was so close. Daniel walked in from his private office, his steps heavy, his usual composed face uncharacteristically strained. He loosened his tie and exhaled hard. He looked like a man carrying the world on his shoulders. "You're still working?" he asked, his voice softer than normal, lacking the sharp dominance he usually carried. Emily gave a tired smile. "Just finishing up. Your schedule looked full today." "It went as badly as it looked," Daniel replied, rubbing his temples. "A major contract fell apart. Investors are panicking. Everyone expects me to perform miracles." Emily hesitated. Daniel never shared personal burdens with anyone, especially not with her. She had seen him snap, demand, command, but never admit weakness. She took a quiet step forward. "Even CEOs are human," she said softly. Daniel looked at her, not with defensiveness, but with exhaustion, like someone who had been holding himself together for too long. It was the first time she felt like she was looking at the man behind the title. A silence settled between them, but not a cold one, something unfamiliar, fragile, emotional, hung in the air. "Sometimes," Daniel said quietly, "I feel like if I stop pretending I'm invincible, everything I've built will collapse." Emily understood that feeling more than he realized. She had lived in survival mode for years. "You don't have to prove everything alone," she whispered. Daniel blinked slowly. "Funny, I thought you hated me." "I never hated you," she said, surprising both of them. "I was just surviving, like you." Daniel stared at her, and she felt the weight of his gaze in places she didn't know could feel anything. He stepped closer, not abruptly, but like someone afraid of scaring away the only person who didn't expect something from him. His voice was low. "Emily, why do you stay here? Anyone else in your situation would have quit or tried to fight back." She swallowed, her throat tight. "I have someone who needs me, my mother. And sometimes you endure things you don't like because the consequences of losing are worse." Daniel's jaw tensed, not with anger, but with a deep internal realization. He had misunderstood her entirely. She wasn't weak. She wasn't silent. She was fighting every single day just to survive. He whispered, "I'm sorry." No one with power had ever apologized to her before. Emily didn't know what to do with the sudden rush of warmth and confusion filling her chest. She tried to deflect. "It's late. You should get some rest." Daniel stepped closer, too close. "What if I don't want to be alone tonight?" Emily froze. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears. "You shouldn't say things like that." "I mean it," Daniel said. "I'm the first person in a long time who sees me more than a CEO." Emily's breath trembled. Every instinct in her told her to step back. Every warning from every women's journal and life lesson screamed that this was trouble. But then Daniel looked at her again, not with donorship, not with entitlement, but with vulnerability. And something inside her broke loose. Daniel reached out slowly, giving her room to pull away. She didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek, gentle, tentative. She hadn't been touched with tenderness in years. She didn't know how much she'd missed feeling human until that moment. "Emily," he whispered. Her voice was barely audible. "This isn't right." "If I commanded," Daniel said quietly, "you'll pull away. If I ask, will you stay?" That question shattered her last shield. He wasn't ordering her. He was giving her the choice. No one had ever given her one before. Emily closed her eyes. "I don't know." Daniel leaned in, his forehead resting against hers. "Then let me show you." The world didn't fall apart. No alarms rang, no consequences stormed in. Instead, a fragile, silent understanding passed between them. Two people, broken in different ways, met in the middle. The kiss that followed didn't begin with hunger or heat. It began with exhaustion and need. A moment of two souls leaning on each other because they had nowhere else left to stand. His arms wrapped around her, but not possessively, supportively. Emily's hands pressed against his chest, feeling his heartbeat, realizing he was trembling as much as she was. The night blurred softly. Walls came down. Fear faded. Hearts opened. For the first time, she wasn't his employee, and he wasn't her employer. They were just Daniel and Emily, people trying to feel whole. Hours later, the city's glow dimmed as dawn teased the horizon. Daniel lay beside her, breathing slowly, as though asleep for the first time in months without nightmares. Emily stared at the ceiling, blanket pulled up to her chin,
her heart pounding. What had she done? The wave of consequences hit all at once. She was still the housekeeper. He was still the CEO, and the world they lived in did not forgive mistakes like this. She moved to sit up, but Daniel's hand closed around her gently, not demanding, not controlling, just holding. "I meant every moment," he murmured, not fully awake. Her eyes stung, because she feared she believed him. But reality was already waiting at the door. If anyone found out, if his board knew, if coworkers whispered, if life decided she wasn't meant to have something good, everything could crumble. Emily inhaled shakily. The night changed everything, and for the first time since she took this job, she was terrified, not of suffering, but of losing something she never expected to find. If you're following this story right now, tell me in the comments, do you think their connection is real, or was it just a moment of weakness? Your opinion matters, and I want to see how many of you believe this night was destiny or disaster. Are you ready for the fallout and the next chapter?
The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Emily's small apartment, casting pale golden lines across the wall. The world outside carried on as usual. Cars honked, children hurried to buses, neighbors swept their porches. But inside, Emily sat frozen at the edge of her bed, staring at the small white pregnancy test in her trembling hands. 2 lines. Her heartbeat stopped. No, this can't, she whispered, tears filling her eyes before she could stop them. She looked again. 2 lines. Not faint, not questionable. Positive. Emily dropped the test onto the bed and covered her mouth as her chest tightened. Memories of that night in Daniel's penthouse washed over her in painful waves. The warmth, the tenderness, a sense of being seen for the first time. But now reality had claws. Her breath came short. This can't be happening. She stood abruptly and paced her tiny room. Her mind reeled through possibilities, none of them good. She was a housekeeper. He was a billionaire CEO. Their worlds didn't touch, they collided, and collisions always left wreckage. She sat abruptly, her legs failing her. What am I going to do? Her phone buzzed. A message from the hospital. Payment required. Next installment due tomorrow. She choked back a sob. She couldn't quit her job, not with her mother depending on her, but how could she hide the pregnancy in the CEO's house? And how would Daniel react when he found out? Would he deny it? Would he fire her? Would he think she planned it? The door to her mother's room creaked open. Her mother blinked sleepily, leaning on the doorframe. "Sweetheart, are you okay?" Emily turned, wiping her tears quickly. Just like always, she had to pretend she was fine. "I'm okay," she lied softly. Her mother didn't press the issue, but her tired eyes lingered a moment longer before she shuffled to the kitchen. Emily exhaled shakily. She couldn't burden her mother, not when she was already fighting illness. She showered, dressed, and forced herself onto the morning bus, her mind trapped in a loop of fear and what-ifs. She couldn't think about the baby without her pulse racing. She couldn't stop thinking about what would happen if anyone found out. When Daniel's penthouse door opened, she steadied her expression and stepped inside, carrying cleaning supplies like armor. She needed to work, to keep her head down, to hold her world together a little longer. But Daniel was already waiting in the hallway. Not cold, not distant. He looked almost happy to see her. "Emily," he said, voice warm. "I was hoping to talk to you." She swallowed hard, panic prickling at the edges of her composure. "About what?" Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "About the other night." Emily's stomach nodded. He continued softly. "I don't regret it. I need you to know that." Her chest squeezed painfully. She wished she could let herself feel the warmth of those words, but she didn't have the luxury anymore. She shook her head, stepping back. "Daniel, please, we shouldn't talk about this." "Why?" he asked, confusion flashing in his eyes. "If you're worried about your job, I meant what I said. I'll protect you. No one will—" "It's not just about my job," she said, cracking. Daniel frowned, trying to understand. "Then what is it?" Emily forced herself to hold his gaze, though her vision burned. She wasn't ready. She didn't know how to say it. She didn't know how he'd react. So she said nothing. Before Daniel could press further, his phone rang sharply. He shut his eyes with frustration and glanced at the caller ID. "The board," he muttered. "They're expecting me now. But this conversation isn't over." Emily nodded numbly as he stepped into the elevator and disappeared. The moment he was gone, she gripped the edge of the counter and gasped for air. She couldn't breathe. She couldn't think. She needed time. Her shift blurred together, scrubbing, dusting, polishing, her hands working on autopilot while her mind spun. Hours later, as she disinfected the lobby desk, her knees suddenly buckled. A dizzy spell washed over her, and she grabbed the counter to steady herself. "Emily?" She flinched. It was Mark, the head security guard, a middle-aged man with kind eyes who had always treated her with quiet respect. "You look pale. Did you eat today?" Emily tried to smile. "I just need some air." "I'll be fine." But as she tried to walk, a sharp nausea shot through her. Mark stepped closer, genuine concern tightening his brow. "You don't look fine," he murmured. "Maybe you should see a doctor." The suggestion hit like a knife. She forced a laugh and shook her head. "I'm okay. Really." She finished her duties and managed to slip out of the building without seeing Daniel again, relief and dread fighting inside her. When she got home, she shut the door and collapsed onto the couch, finally letting the tears come. She hugged herself, feeling the weight of the secret pressing down. She wasn't just scared of the pregnancy. She was scared of the world that would judge her. She imagined the whispers. Gold digger. Schemer. Trying to trap a rich man. It didn't matter that none of it was true. People believed what they wanted. And she'd be the villain in every version. Emily brushed her hands against her stomach. "I don't know how to protect you." Her phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Daniel. "We need to finish our conversation." "Dinner tonight?" Her heart twisted. He deserved to know.
but telling him could destroy everything. Hours later, she stared at her phone, tears slipping silently down her face as she typed, "I'm sorry, I can't make it tonight." She put the phone down and curled into a ball, feeling more alone than she had ever felt before. Meanwhile, across the city, Daniel stared at her message, a muscle ticking in his jaw. He didn't understand what suddenly changed. He didn't know she was terrified. He only felt the sting of rejection and the confusion of not knowing why. And sitting in her dark apartment, Emily whispered into the silence, "I wish someone would tell me what to do." Now, I want to hear from you. If you were in Emily's shoes, alone, terrified, and carrying a secret that could destroy your life, would you tell Daniel immediately, or would you try to hide it?
The next morning, the air in Daniel's headquarters felt unusually sharp, like the building itself sensed a storm brewing. Executives rushed through the marble lobby, assistants carrying folders, phones ringing non-stop. Something was wrong. Daniel stepped out of his private elevator with his phone pressed to his ear, jaw tight. "I want those quarterly files rechecked. If someone inside leaked projections, I want names today." But even as he barked orders, his mind wasn't fully on the crisis. He kept replaying Emily's cancellation from the night before. Something had changed. He just didn't know what. He was heading toward the boardroom when his assistant, Lauren, intercepted him, face tense. "You need to see this, now." She handed him a tablet with a confidential email thread open. His blood ran cold. From Senior Partner, Harper & Co. Subject, Investigation. An anonymous internal source claims CEO Daniel Cross is having an inappropriate relationship with a household employee. If verified, this will qualify as grounds for breach of corporate ethics and potential removal. A chair scraped loudly as Daniel dropped into the nearest seat, stunned. This couldn't be real. Someone knew, and someone was using it to destroy him. Lauren lowered her voice. "Daniel, if this goes public, it could ruin everything. The board will demand answers." Daniel clenched his fists. The company he had built from the ground up, now hanging by threads controlled by some unseen enemy. He stood abruptly. "Find out who leaked this. I want their name before noon." But even as his fury took over, fear seeped in from behind it. What would happen to Emily if her name surfaced? She could become the target of the media, employees, investors, everyone with an opinion but no understanding. Emily had suffered enough. He wouldn't let her take the fall for this. He grabbed his coat and stormed toward the exit. "I'm going to her." At that exact moment, Emily was sitting in a quiet clinic waiting room, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Posters of smiling families lined the mint-colored walls, mocking her. She was waiting for confirmation, though deep down, she already knew. When the nurse finally called her in, Emily followed stiffly, trying not to cry. Tests were run, blood was drawn. She sat on the edge of the examination table until the doctor returned, clipboard in hand. "Miss Harper," the doctor said gently, "you are definitely pregnant. About 5 weeks." Emily's vision blurred with tears. There it was. Official. The doctor continued, "You're underweight and stress levels seem high. You need rest, good diet, and support. Do you have a partner or family?" Emily shook her head instantly. "No, I'll handle it." The doctor didn't push, but her eyes softened. "Just remember, you don't have to go through this alone." Emily forced a smile and left before her composure could break again. Outside, she wrapped her arms around herself and walked toward the bus stop.
Rain began to fall, light at first, then steadily, cold and relentless. People around her rushed for umbrellas and taxis, but Emily just kept walking, water soaking her shoes, her hair, her clothes. Her world was already drowning. Back at the corporate headquarters, Daniel returned to find the boardroom filled with tension. 8 directors sat around the long table, expressions severe. The chairman cleared his throat. "Daniel, we need to discuss a developing matter." Daniel strode to the end of the table. "If this is about the anonymous accusation, it's baseless. Someone is trying to sabotage the company." The chairman tapped a remote. The large screen behind him lit up, not with financial charts, but with a leaked headline from a major news blog. "Insider claims, CEO having secret relationship with housekeeping staff." A chill swept the room. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. "This is an attack on my personal life and an attempt to destabilize the company. You all have known me for 10 years. The finance director cut him off. "And does that relationship exist?" Daniel froze. The entire board watched, waiting. Because if he denied it and evidence came out later, everything would collapse harder. Finally, Daniel spoke, voice low. "Yes, but no rules were broken. There is no misconduct." Murmurs exploded around the table. The legal advisor leaned forward. "You understand what the press will do with this. What shareholders will say when they learned the CEO was involved with a subordinate employee?" Daniel clenched his jaw. "She wasn't a subordinate. She worked for my home, and the matter is personal. It does not affect the company." But the board saw vulnerability, and some of them liked the sight of it. The chairman sighed. "Fix this, quickly, because if this evolves into scandal, we will be forced to take action." Daniel left the room with a fury that burned behind his ribs. Whoever leaked this had planned it perfectly, at the exact moment the company was facing other pressures. Someone wanted him gone. Across town, Emily finally reached her building, shivering from the rain. She unlocked the door and stepped into the small living room, relieved to find her mother napping. She slipped into her own room, changed into dry clothes, and sat on the floor with her back against the bed. She touched her belly, eyes filling again. She had no idea how she would raise a child alone. No savings, no security, and the father? A man whose name was tied to headlines, power, and scandals. Not normal life. Her phone vibrated. A message from her coworker. "Have you seen the news? They're saying the CEO is involved with a maid. Is that you?" Emily's breath dropped out of her lungs. Her trembling fingers pulled up her internet browser. There it was. Her worst nightmare come true. Dozens of posts and articles. Mystery housekeeper identified soon. Gold digger or victim? Exclusive. Investor claims CEO's behavior has been questionable for weeks. Emily's vision swam. She felt the walls closing in. The world now believed she was nothing more than a scandal. A knock startled her. She opened the door and froze. Daniel stood there, dripping with rain, his usually controlled expression filled with panic. "I came as soon as I saw the leak. Emily, we need to talk." She stepped back, overwhelmed. She turned away, unable to meet his eyes. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel moved closer. "You don't understand. They're using you to get to me. Whoever did this wants to remove me from the company." She swallowed hard. "I can't be part of your world, Daniel. I wasn't meant for it." He reached for her hand. "Emily, let me protect you." She jerked away, tears spilling. "You can't protect me from headlines, from judgment, from the world calling me a liar and a schemer." Daniel's heart twisted. He had run corporations, negotiated with billionaires, commanded boardrooms, but he had no idea how to fight the kind of pain she was drowning in. He finally managed, voice raw, "Whatever happens out there, I won't let you face it alone." Emily shook her head. Her voice cracked. "You're already facing enough. The company is turning on you. The board wants answers. The press is tearing you apart." She hesitated, then spoke the truth that broke her own heart. "And there's something else you don't know." Daniel's brows furrowed. "What is it?" Emily's lips trembled, but just as the words formed, the sound of her mother coughing violently from the next room interrupted. Daniel watched in shock as Emily rushed to her mother's side, supporting her gently, whispering comfort, helping her sip water, wiping tears from her mother's face with a tenderness that made him realize just how much she carried alone. He stood frozen in the doorway, seeing the woman behind the rumors, not a scandal, but a daughter fighting the world with nothing but her own exhaustion and love. His determination hardened. Whoever leaked this, whoever set this trap, they would pay. But the world was already watching, and the clock was ticking.
Daniel stood in the hallway outside Emily's apartment, feeling the weight of everything crashing around them. The company scandal, the board's threats, the press tearing apart their private lives, and now the glimpse of a sick mother he never knew existed. For the first time in his life, he realized just how little he knew about the woman who had quietly changed him. Emily returned from her mother's room, eyes tired, hands shaking. Daniel stepped forward. "Emily, tell me what you were trying to say." She looked down, blowing out a trembling breath. Her chest tightened, her lips parted. "I'm pregnant." The words broke the silence like a lightning strike. Daniel froze, the world narrowing to a pinpoint. He stared at her, shocked but speechless. Emily braced herself for the worst: denial, anger, cold logic, anything. Instead, Daniel whispered, voice cracking, "You're pregnant? With my child?" Emily nodded slowly, tears welling. "I didn't plan it. I didn't even know until yesterday. And I didn't tell you because I didn't think you'd want it." Daniel took a slow step forward. "Emily, I wanted you, and I want everything that comes with you." Her breath shook. "You don't understand. Your whole life, your company, is crashing because someone found out. If they learn about the baby—" Daniel gently touched her hands, grounding her. "This isn't your burden. This is mine." She swallowed. "It's not just your career. The press is tearing me apart. They think I'm a gold digger. They'll do worse if they find out I'm having your baby." Daniel's eyes hardened, not with anger at her, but with fury at the world. "Then let me make something clear," he said softly. "I won't let anyone speak about you that way. I won't let anyone destroy you or our child." She shook her head. "You can't protect everything. You can't fight the whole world alone." "No," he agreed quietly, "but I can fight it with you." Her emotions trembled on the edge of breaking. No one had ever stood by her. Not fully, not without conditions. Daniel met her eyes with sincerity she never expected from a man who once seemed made of ice. "I want this child, and I want you." Emily covered her mouth as tears spilled over. Daniel continued gently, "Let me take care of you, not because I'm trying to buy responsibility or fix what's broken, but because I love you." The words stunned even him. He hadn't planned to say it, not now, not in the middle of chaos, but once said, it felt right, true. Emily pressed her hand to her heart. "You don't have to say that just because I'm pregnant." Daniel shook his head. "I'm saying it because somewhere along the way, you stopped being my housekeeper and started being the person I can't imagine losing." Emily's tears finally fell freely as he cupped her cheek gently. Across the city, the press storm continued. Blogs, commentators, analysts, all shredding Daniel's reputation. Investors demanded explanations. Rumors multiplied like wildfire. At headquarters, board members circulated strategies for pushing Daniel out. They thought he would break. They didn't know him. Daniel arrived at the office the next morning with a new fire in his stride. Not the cold fury they had seen before, but a quiet, unshakable resolve. He entered the boardroom and faced the directors. "I'm not stepping down." The chairman lifted an eyebrow. "Daniel, the scandal is escalating. Shareholders are demanding action." Daniel tapped a folder on the table. "This scandal only exists because someone from this board leaked confidential personal information to the press. I have the digital trail, the timestamps, and the forwarded internal files." Silence fell like a stone. Daniel continued, locking eyes with one of the senior directors, the one who had been angling for his position for years. "Harper Industries has weathered worse storms, and I will lead it through this one, but I won't tolerate betrayal within my own table." He swallowed hard. Some heads turned, some eyes lowered. They had underestimated him. Daniel straightened. "Now, unless anyone has further concerns, we have a company to run." And just like that, he reclaimed the room. That evening, Daniel returned to Emily's building, not the penthouse, but the small apartment where she lived. He knocked gently. Emily opened the door wearing sweats and a loose shirt, hair in a messy bun, looking more beautiful than 1,000 actresses on red carpets Daniel had attended with empty hearts. "I want you and your mother to move somewhere safe, somewhere better, somewhere you don't have to worry about landlord issues or hospital bills." Emily shook her head. "It sounds perfect, but it scares me. I'm used to surviving on my own." Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe it's time you're not alone anymore." He stepped inside and knelt in front of her mother's chair. Her mother blinked in surprise. He spoke softly. "Mrs. Harper, you've been carrying burdens for too long. Let me help." Her mother stared at him, then smiled weakly. "You love my daughter?" Daniel's voice softened. "With everything I have." Emily's breath caught. Her mother nodded. "Then don't let her run from happiness the way I did." Emily covered her mouth, emotional beyond words. Days passed. Daniel arranged top medical care for her mother, a private physician, hospital bills covered, a safer home. Emily tried to protest, but Daniel gently squeezed her hand. "You've spent your whole life giving. Let someone give back." Emily finally allowed herself to breathe and accept. For the first time, nights passed without fear or dread. Daniel stayed often, not sleeping with her every night, but simply being present. Late one evening, they sat on the small apartment couch, Emily resting her head on his shoulder as his hands slid gently over her growing abdomen. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Terrified, but also hopeful. Daniel kissed her top of the head. "We'll figure it out, together." She turned to look at him. "You really want this? The baby and me?" Daniel smiled. "I want a future that isn't all boardrooms and stock reports. I want a home. I want a family. I want us." Emily leaned into him, tears slipping quietly. For the first time, the future didn't feel impossible. A month later, Daniel made the biggest public move of his career.
He stood at a press conference podium, dozens of cameras flashing. Behind him, screens displayed market reports and the company's rising numbers after his restructuring. But the press wanted something else. "Mr. Cross, can you comment on the rumors about your personal life?" Daniel looked directly into the cameras. "Yes, I am in a committed relationship with someone who has brought clarity, love, and stability into a life that was blindly devoted to work, and I'm proud of that." The room buzzed. He continued, "Anyone attacking her is attacking me, and anyone who believes a woman must be wealthy or powerful to deserve respect should rethink their values." Some reporters paused, some lowered cameras, some kept going. But the message was clear. Daniel was not running, not hiding, not abandoning Emily. Back at home, Emily watched the broadcast with her mother, hand pressed to her chest as tears streamed freely. He chose her, in front of the world. Her mother smiled softly. "He's a good man. Flawed like every other, but good." Emily nodded through tears. "Yes, and he's ours." That evening, Daniel returned home to find Emily waiting outside with a smile. He paused. "What?" he asked, amused. She stepped forward and handed him a small ultrasound photo. Daniel froze. A tiny shape, no bigger than a bean, but their whole world. His eyes filled. He cupped her face and kissed her forehead. "Thank you," he whispered, "for trusting me." Emily smiled.
Thank you for proving I wasn't alone. She took his hand and placed it on her stomach. This is our new beginning. Daniel wrapped his arms around her and held her close, the city lights glowing behind them. Two people who began in conflict, who healed through love, who chose each other despite the world, now ready to build a life no rumor, scandal, or storm could ever take away. If you're still reading this love story right now, tell me in the comments, would you want a full movie of Daniel and Emily's journey? And what should their baby's name be? Time passed, and the city skyline shimmered outside the penthouse windows. She stood there, watching the lights of New York flicker like silent witnesses to everything she had survived. From a struggling housekeeper who barely made rent, to the wife of a powerful CEO who now treated her like the heart of his world. She touched her belly, smiling softly as the baby kicked, alive, healthy, and growing, not just a symbol of their mistake, but the proof of their transformation. He entered quietly, jacket off, sleeves rolled, no longer the cold, iron-walled CEO the world once feared. He slid his arms around her from behind, resting his forehead on her shoulder. He whispered that there would never be another moment where she felt alone, not in this home, not in life, not again. Because she had taught him what real strength looked like. Not power, not money, not reputation, but the courage to still love after being hurt, to hope after being disappointed, to get back up after being broken. He told her that the board who once laughed at her now respected her. She had become the voice of compassion in a world built on greed. She had shown everyone that sometimes the solution wasn't another contract, but a heartbeat. She had transformed a company simply by being herself, and she didn't change to fit their world. She changed their world to make room for people like her. She finally turned to him, looking into the eyes that once terrified her. No arrogance, no distance, just love, raw and honest. He promised that their child would grow up seeing what loyalty and redemption looked like, not reading about it in books. They walked together to the small nursery they had built. Soft lights, tiny furniture, pastel colors, and a rocking chair by the window. She paused in the doorway, tears forming as reality washed over her. This wasn't the life she expected. She hadn't dreamed of marrying a CEO. She didn't plan on falling into his world. She had just taken a job to keep the lights on. Life did the rest. Because sometimes, fate chooses for you. She sat in the rocking chair, and he knelt beside her, resting his hand over hers. He told her that he didn't fall in love with her beauty, her voice, or her innocence. He fell in love with the woman who still smiled, even when her life was falling apart. The woman who stood up for others when she had nothing. The woman who taught him that success meant nothing if you didn't have someone to come home to. She laughed softly, brushing her eyes. She told him that she hadn't fallen in love with the CEO the world admired. She fell in love with the man who learned how to apologize, how to protect her without controlling her, how to be a father before the baby was even born. Then she said something that stunned him, something that would stay with him forever. "You gave me a life I never expected, but I gave you a heart you never knew you had." He looked at her like she was the most extraordinary miracle he had ever witnessed. Because she was. This wasn't a story of a maid being rescued. This was a story of a man being saved. Not from loneliness, but from himself. Outside, the world kept turning, unaware of the quiet love story unfolding in a high-rise nursery. But inside that home, something unforgettable had been built. A family born from pain, destiny, and impossible odds. Their love wasn't perfect, but it was real. And sometimes, that's all fate needs. Now the screen fades to quiet music, and here's where I talk directly to you watching this story. If you were in her place, if life gave you a chance you never saw coming, would you take it? Would you forgive someone who once hurt you? Would you believe love can grow in the most impossible places? Tell me in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you would do. And if this story touched your heart even a little, help more people see it by liking this video. Subscribe if you want more stories filled with heartbreak, redemption, and destinies that change lives. And remember this, you never know when a normal day, a simple job, or a single moment will flip your entire life upside down in the best way possible. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next story.